Now we're joined by Daniel McAdams, Executive Director of the Ron Paul Institute. Thanks for joining us, Daniel. Okay, so is the condemnation of Maduro also kind of a call for U.S. intervention in Venezuela?
Well, certainly it is. I mean, that's the propaganda is what clears the field for warfare. You start with propaganda. You start with demonizing the enemy. We've seen this over and over again, just the 21st century alone, with Saddam Hussein, with Gaddafi, with Assad. You first have to demonize the person, make him into the next Hitler, and then who in their right mind would oppose a U.S. liberation? This is exactly the path we're going down right now, yet again on Venezuela.
Well, that's my question for you, Daniel. You know, on one hand, you keep hearing there's a humanitarian crisis down in Venezuela, and there is definitely some issues that are hitting the country economically. But then on the other hand, you have John Bolton coming out there and saying, nope, this is about the oil. This is definitely about the oil. Is there not kind of conflicting messages coming out of both the White House as well as Congress and those that are endorsing us getting involved?
Well, it is partly about the oil, and you got to give him credit for being blunt, but this is also Bolton and his neocon buddies basically returning to the 80s. Elliott Abrams did a heck of a lot of damage in Latin America in the 1980s. Thousands are dead. They're returning to this. Venezuela is only step one in a bigger plan. Remember the troika of tyranny, which they say is Cuba, Nicaragua, and Venezuela, which normal people would say is Bolton, Pompeo, and Abrams. But once they start with Venezuela, they want to move along. They want to get the other countries overthrown as well and have all the countries of Latin America basically being in the U.S.'s back pocket. It's an old game that they're trying to dust off and play once again.
Well, that's my question. You do say that there's obviously all these neocons that are encouraging military involvement. However, as we've seen, did we not learn any lessons from Iraq? So looking at Venezuela, if we really did care about the people of Venezuela, is there any sort of circumstance that you could see that we could go in and actually help those on the ground without getting our military involved?
No, not at all. If you want to help the Venezuelan people, simply remove the sanctions. You don't have to do anything more than that. President Trump announced that he's stealing their money. He's nationalized Venezuela's oil company. That's a dictatorial move. He does not have any constitutional authority. We're not at war with Venezuela. By what rights does he steal their oil company? If you want to help the Venezuelan people, allow them to sell their oil, their gold, sell things on the market, and feed themselves. That's all you need to do.
Okay, so how can you explain that for once it seems like not only are Republicans and Democrats on both sides of the aisle agreeing that they want some sort of action within Venezuela involving the U.S., but you see countries that for the past few months, the past few years since Trump's become president, we've been at odds with, whether we're talking about the new NAFTA deal with Mexico and Canada, as well as all of these other countries that normally have not had positive feelings towards the United States. They're backing the United States right now. So why do you think they're all getting along and joining behind this administration and getting involved in Venezuela?
Well, if you want to talk about parties in Washington, well, both parties are the war parties. They're just the left and right wings of the war party. They love war. War is the lifeblood of Washington. Why are the countries down there lining up behind us? Well, there have also been some coups down there and some sketchy elections down there, places like Honduras. The U.S. has been putting in puppets into power in Latin America for a number of years now, and now they're trying to cash in those chips. I think that's why you're seeing these countries line up behind them.
Well, that's interesting because you start off our conversation talking about the propaganda that's being put out there. And we are seeing on the streets protests over the weekend from both sides. The question is, how are we supposed to know what truly is going on with the country and from the people? How are we able to tell what is fake news coming out of Venezuela and news that actually needs our attention?
Well, that's the beauty of it. We don't have to sort this out because it's none of our business. Unfortunately, Bolton openly appealed to the Venezuelan military to get involved. He's essentially telling the Venezuelan military to go to war against the Venezuelan people. People are on the streets on both sides. Even in the best case scenario for the neocons, say it's 50-50 divided between them. That would be a catastrophic war if it were to take place. So the beauty is we don't have to decide. It's none of our business. Leave them alone, stop the sanctions, and stop this ridiculous regime change that has never worked and never will work.
Well, the one argument that a lot of conservatives are saying the reason why they're for this is because obviously these caravans that continue to come up through South America, a lot of them feeling like a lot of it's coming from Venezuela and other countries. How do you address their concerns in saying this is not the way, putting more war? Vietnam is what President Maduro has said would happen if we get involved. How do you address their concerns and say there's a better way to handle the continued movement towards our border and our border crisis?
I mean, these people are addicted to fake news. Look what happened in Europe when the Europeans stupidly followed the U.S. in trying to overthrow Assad. What happened? You had a massive migration of refugees into Germany and the rest of Europe. It's our interventionism that creates these refugees. There's no way you can avoid having refugees if you destroy the country that they're living in. So, I mean, I don't know, basic logic is somehow out the window in Washington. Maybe there's something in the water, they're smoking something, I don't know, but it's pretty basic if you look at just recent history.
Well, to say that basic logic has left Washington means that at some point it was here. So maybe it will come back. I just have to find the time and date that it first existed in this town. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Scottie.
Hey YouTube, thanks for checking out our channel. We hope you enjoyed the video. We have tons of content for you just like this. For more of RT America's one-of-a-kind news and analysis, be sure to subscribe and never stop questioning more.